Video today, I'm going to talk about red flag number 45, and that is that narcissists discard you like trash. And specifically, I want to talk to you about how to handle the narcissistic discard. Now, I've heard this expression so many times, I thought I'd use it here to drive the point home that this is how you'll end up if you get involved with a narcissist, unless you have the foresight and the presence of mind to get out and be the one doing the discarding. But I think it's such a horrible thing to think or to say when it's about a human being, but that is how a narcissist makes you feel when they discard you. They make you feel like a piece of trash that they no longer want or need. And that, I think, is just horrendous. Now, narcissists walk out on you even after years and years together. They leave marriages and children behind. Although sometimes they try and take the children off you, and that's a huge subject, parental alienation, for another series of videos that I'm planning. But for those who discard you and leave the children, they leave the marriages, they leave everything behind. And when they do that, they often make it very, very clear they found someone else and they are so happy. And they want to twist the knife by making sure that you know this. So they'll often flaunt it wherever they can, because discarding you is not enough for them. They want to continue hurting you. The reality that they can just walk away from you after years, after professing to love you so much, is one of the hardest things for the victim to come to terms with. And generally, they just can't believe it, you know, it's just too much to contemplate. How can they do this? How can someone that, you know, you were married to, or you spent 10 or 15 or more years with, how can they suddenly just walk away, turn their back on you as if they never cared a jot for you? How can they do this? I get asked this question at least once a day, and often more than that. And the simple answer is they can do it because they are narcissists. They are wired differently from normal people. They have a mental illness. You know, it's a DSM-5 cluster B personality disorder. It's a mental illness. So you need to remember that. You need to keep that in focus at all time. Now, they'll do this abandoning and discarding you, even if you're financially dependent on them, and they'll strive to take everything from you and leave you penniless, leave you in the gutter. They don't care. You know, if you take legal action, which you very often must do, they will be prepared to fight you every step of the way. So you really need to shore up your inner reserves if you're going to fight a narcissist, because they'll take absolutely everything and they want to leave you with nothing. You have to be prepared to fight. So now, if you're getting divorced or there are custody issues with children, a narcissist will do absolutely everything in their power to make things as difficult as possible for you. They don't want a peaceful, easy settlement that's best for everyone. And as I've said, I'm going to talk about parental alienation in a separate bunch of videos because it's a vast subject. But just briefly mentioning it here, that they don't want a nice, peaceful settlement that's good for you and good for them and good for the children, because that is what a normal person wants. So if you're going to be divorcing, and particularly if you've got children together, brace yourself, because a whole new fight is about to begin and you're in for the battle of your life in most cases. At this stage, you need all the help that you can get, and you need to find a good lawyer who knows their way around, at the very least, domestic violence, or have experience with high conflict divorce and custody battles. Okay, you need to be looking for someone who's got that. This is not going to be easy, but they can be found. Now, even if you win, you get what you want, you get your day in court, you get exactly what you've asked for, including, you know, custody agreements, whatever, with children. Don't expect narcissists to comply with court orders. for child support or other financial obligations. What you have to remember is that narcissists don't recognize authority and they consider themselves above the law. So you need to be ready for the possibility that that's going to happen, because it very possibly will happen. If you're prepared for it, then it isn't going to blindside you as much as it would do otherwise. What most people I've talked to and I've worked with, and people in my group have said about this, is how much of a shock they feel when this happens, when their partner just discards them. How could they just walk away as if they never meant anything? And as they begin researching and learning about NPD and abuse, they're shocked even more at the realization of what they've actually been dealing with. So you discover that the person that you loved, who you thought loved you, is a total fake. And it's absolutely devastating. How can anyone treat another human being in this way? It's incomprehensible to you. This is when cognitive dissonance also kicks in. And I've talked about this in a previous video. Cognitive dissonance kicks in here because you simply can't accept this. You can't reconcile that this person, for all the good and bad times that you spent all this time with, has suddenly just discarded you as if you don't exist. And you don't matter to them, initially you might find yourself just rejecting this because this can't be true. You kind of go into a state of denial. And this is even more difficult when you've been living with someone for a very long time. I know people who've been married 20, 30 years before one day their spouse just walked out. Just out, gone. That's it. End of story. Over. Done with you. And it's a horrifying shock. But as you learn more and more and start connecting all the dots in your relationship, the truth really starts to dawn on you, because you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and you look back and things start falling into place. It all starts to make sense. Now, with that comes the total emotional fallout. You're left devastated, feeling like a fool. How could you have been taken in? How could you have fallen for it? How can you ever forgive yourself for your own stupidity? How can you ever trust anyone again? How the heck are you going to deal with this excruciating pain? These are the types of questions you'll find yourself asking yourself all the time. They'll be tumbling around inside your head as your shattered heart tries to make sense of it all. And it is not a pleasant place to be by any stretch of the imagination. The reality is it's a complete hell. And on top of all this hurt and confusion and emotional pain, often comes depression, to the point that you might struggle to get out of bed in the morning. Just today, I had somebody message me saying, I don't know what to do. I'm barely able to get out of bed in the morning. You will get anxiety. You can suffer with c-ptsd, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and trauma bonding, all of which I talk about in previous videos, because these are all real things that happen and you don't understand it. So then you think, well, how can I want this person back? After what they've done to me? Why do you miss them? You may feel angry, you may feel hatred towards them, you may want revenge, you may want to get in front of your ex and give them a piece of your mind. You might find yourself creating alternative profiles on social media so you can stalk them and see what they're up to. And I know many, many people who've done this. And I always say to them, stop all of this, because none of this is going to help you. Doing this will just hurt you more, because now you'll see them out there with their new flame and they might be looking all happy, might be out on a boat that you paid for with your life savings, which is actually what happened to one of the people who messaged me in one of the groups I was in, or she was in at one point. And it was horrendous. He stripped her of her life savings, bought a flashy boat, and then dumped her. And the next thing, he's posting all over his Facebook pictures of him with his new target, his new squeeze, out on the boat that she paid for, while she was at home broken, depressed and absolutely devastated. And what do? How do you put the broken pieces of yourself back together when something like that happens? You know, what I know from a lot of the people I've worked with and had long conversations with is that, you know, you can go out of your mind trying to figure out why have they done this? When you've done everything in your power to please them, to love them, you know, you've loved them without question. You've done everything to make them happy. You've given up on everything. You've given in to everything they ever wanted and needed. You allowed yourself to almost become non-existent in terms of who you are as a person in order to please them, to bend into every shape to please them. You might have supported them through any number of difficult times. So now what's happened? What have you done wrong? And the simple truth is, and you will hear me saying this many times, I tend to repeat concepts that are so fundamentally important for you to grasp in your healing journey. The simple truth is you've done nothing wrong. You never did anything wrong. Your only mistake was having the misfortune to hook up with them in the first place. But you couldn't have known what you were letting yourself in for. You didn't know then what you know now. And most people who fall for a narcissist don't know. They just don't know until they're in the thick of it and they go looking for help and they go Googling and they find out, oh my God, this is a thing. I'm dealing with a narcissist. Now, the reason the narcissist discards you is based purely on the complex psychology of their disorder. This is so important for you if you're struggling now to understand, what did I do wrong? How am I going to fix this? And you can't fix a narcissist, by the way, you can only fix yourself. But the really important thing is that you understand that it's the discarders, because that's what narcissists do. It's part of their warped psychology, of their disorder. It is not based on anything that you did or didn't do or could have done differently or should have done differently. Or if you're sitting there wishing and wondering, stop it. Nothing you could have done would have made any difference. You have to start believing that. What you have to remember is that they idealized you in the beginning, and as long as you kept compliant and kept giving them the fuel that they needed, they stayed with you. Now, during this time, they almost always are getting fuel from other sources. So you, if you're living with them and you're in a full-time relationship with them, you would be classed as the primary source of fuel, but they will be getting secondary supply from other places, you know, other people. But you probably are not aware of this. They can idealize you for a long time, but gradually they start to realize that you're not perfect. Wow, you're a real human being with real needs, and they can't cope with that. In their minds, you exist purely to satisfy their wants and needs and desires and fit into their idealized version of you. But when reality starts to butt in too much and you start showing up as the human being that you are, perfectly imperfect, as we all are, they flee. They run for the hills because they don't know how to deal with real relationships. Everything about them is an illusion. And they are an illusion that you fell for, and you are an illusion they targeted because they thought that you were the magical, mystical being, the ideal love, mythologized in their minds, a creature fabricated out of their own ridiculous fantasies. And this is really what goes on with narcissists. They have this fantasy in their mind. But of course, the reality is you're just an ordinary human being. But in their warped minds, you have let them down. You've betrayed them by not being perfect, by not living up to their fantasy, by not being compliant. They feel they have a right to pay you back for letting them down. And that's why they start the smear campaign, which is coming up next. I think the next video I'm doing is all about the smear campaign. And it's why they start that against you. You have to remember also that their logic is their logic, and it doesn't make sense to you or anyone else. They bear no blame for anything in the relationship, because if you don't know it, you might know it by now, but if not, then know it. They cannot take responsibility for their actions, and they blame shift constantly. And that's another red flag I talk about earlier in the series. Nothing is ever their fault. So the breakup, the discard, no matter how ugly it is and no matter how much it's all on them, it's always your fault, and you're going to be punished, and they will see to it. So you must also realize that the discard actually starts as soon as the devaluing starts. It's just the finale to the years or months or however long of devaluing you've endured. It's just a matter of time. The narcissist will discard you based on their notion of your blatant imperfections. But what it boils down to is this: you've stopped giving them the fuel they need, and there is nothing to gain from staying with you. Now, it could be for any of these reasons. It could be that you've got grey rock down to such a fine art, they get no response from you anymore. And grey rock is something you'll know about if you are much further along in your journey to understanding and healing from narcissistic abuse. And you may be using it, as are many people I know who are still stuck in relationships, marriages that they cannot get out of. So they use grey rock as a way to help them cope and get through it, okay? So in that situation, it may be that you've got the grey rock down to such a fine art, they are not getting any narcissistic supply or fuel from you anymore. Even when you know that they've been abusive and that's why you've grey rocked them, the reality of them leaving you can still be hard. Now, another reason they could leave is because you may be so emotionally and physically exhausted that you just can't be bothered to react or respond anymore, that you're just so emotionally numb and over it that you don't bother. You just don't have the energy. You can't be asked to give them any response. You just kind of go into a state of apathy almost. Cases like this I hear about all the time too. And at that point, they will be angry with you because you've stopped giving them the fuel, and they won't just be happy to walk away and leave you to it. And this is one of the things I find so particularly vile about narcissists. There's a lot of things that's vile, but I think this is one of the worst because it's just so it's so vindictive and nasty. So that's one other reason. Another reason they could discard you is because you've seen through them and they know it. Now, this is the most terrifying thing that can happen to them, and they cannot face the truth of who they are. So they will leave you, they will dump you as punishment, and they will continue trying to destroy you. Now, it could also be, and often is, that they have found a superlative new source of supply, and they want to immediately dedicate their all to this new person. You know, they've grown bored with you over a long time. Now they have this sparkling new person. Wow, they really want to give their all to that person. So that's it, out the door they walk, they discard you. Your history to them, okay? Now, this this last one can come out of the blue, because you might have been ambling along and thinking that, you know, everything in your life was fine. Your relationship was going to go on as it has been, with its ups and downs. And as far as you were concerned, you know, that's how it was. But then suddenly this emotional tornado blows through your life and you don't know what's hit you. And I know people this has happened to too. You know, they knew the relationship wasn't perfect. They knew the partner wasn't perfect, but they kind of got used to the ebb and flow of the relationship. This happens. And some people are just comfortable in that uncomfortable zone. It's true, because you kind of get used to stuff. So I know a lot of people who are in that situation, just chugging along, and then suddenly out of the blue, the person's discarded them and they are completely upended. And this kind of unexpected discard is really, really painful, because in most cases, you will have had plans that, you know, your life would be together, you know, for good or for worse, if not a happily ever after. And in some cases, there is that notion. Not often with narcissists, but there you go. But basically, you know, the life that you thought you were going to have with this person has blown up. It's you know, it's blown up. It's up in smoke. And you're the one who's left choking on the fumes, because the narcissist has gone swanning off into Sunset Valley with the new supply. Now, to add insult to massive injury, they generally will immediately start posting pictures on social media. Now, they don't all do this, I know that, but a lot of them do, so that you can see them looking all shiny and happy with their new target. And what you do then is you start obsessing about this person. You know, what does this new person have that you don't have? Why have they been chosen? What's wrong with you? Why weren't you enough? You might find yourself even feeling real hatred for this person that you don't even know, because you view them as the one who's the reason why, if not stolen your man or your woman, they're at least the reason why your partner has left. And if you feel this way, it's not unusual. But what you need to do is to channel your anger and hurt somewhere. So when you calm down, you can realize that the new target is not and never was the problem. And you are not and never were the problem. Your partner is the problem. The narcissist in your life is the problem, okay? So regardless of why, you're left in a crumpled heap. You might be shattered, you might be broken and struggling to fathom the unfathomable. Now, when this happens to you, you need to get support. So first thing I'd suggest is contact family or friends, someone who will believe you and will really understand your side of the story. Get yourself into a support group if you're not in one already. I have 3 different Facebook support groups, one for men, one for women, and one for mixed, which is focused on parental alienation. If you can afford to get a therapist, then absolutely get a therapist. If you can't, contact a support helpline. Most areas have them. Some have free counseling, free online counseling. You've got to look. I have people coming to me all the time in my Facebook group saying, you know, I'd love to work with you, but I can't afford to because I can't take insurance either. I live in Spain and most of the people I work with tend to be from the States, United States, and I can't accept insurance because companies over there won't accept, you know, therapists outside. So I have a lot of people who want to work with me but can't for that reason. But also I have a lot of people who say that, well, I really want to work with you, but I'm financially devastated. I can't afford to pay for any therapy, which I also understand. Now, I'm a private therapist and I am not funded by any charity, government, insurance, anything. So I can't work with people in those situations, but I will always try and help them find someone who can work with them. And almost every time this happens, I will go and check where they live. I will see what kind of online resources I can find. And guaranteed, I can always find some resources where they can get help, where they can reach out, and it isn't going to cost them anything. So if you're in that situation, what I say to you is just be resourceful. Go and get onto Google and start looking for help in your area. Start looking for support groups. Start looking for free counseling, because there's a lot more help out there to be had than you might realize. And as I say, almost every time someone comes to me, I will go and check and I will find it, and I can send them a link and say, here, check this out. And they do, okay? So you have to find a way to help yourself, because, you know, this can feel like the worst time in your life, but you've got to start telling yourself immediately, I can and will get over this. Just keep saying it and repeat it like a mantra in those early days if you have to. You have to really dig deep and find every ounce of courage that you can to fight your way out. And you can do it. You can get over it. I know tons of people who have. I'm seeing it every single day. So trust that you can. Now, even if you're the one doing the discarding, your life doesn't suddenly change and go back to being normal and perfect. After an experience with a narcissist, you'll never be the same person again. The trauma you've been through will have changed you forever. You're the one who has discarded the narcissist because you've finally woken up and realized you cannot spend another minute in this relationship. But if you do the discarding, and I take my metaphorical hat off to you, if you do, I do applaud you for doing that. But if you do it, be prepared for more trouble, because more trouble is coming, more than likely. So I want to just mention here that there are some cases where you might want to kick the narcissist out, but they refuse to leave. And this might be for any number of reasons, but mostly because they're sitting pretty and they're content to keep it that way. It may be financially better for them. They might be financially much better off. Maybe you're paying all the bills. Maybe they're happy that you're doing their laundry or cooking their meals, keeping the home spotless, all of that good stuff. Now, this happens all the time, trust me. Now, this is actually much more likely to happen with a vulnerable or a victim narcissist, because they are too lazy to find another situation and they're quite happy to carry on using you as his or her personal servant. Now, in this case, if you're ready for this to be over, you really are ready, you may actually have to take legal action to get them out of your home. Now, no matter how the relationship ends, whether you've discarded or they've discarded you, trouble may still be around the corner. And as I've said, it's not a case of they'll walk away and forget about you. Quite often, what's going to happen is they're going to involve flying monkeys, which I'll talk about in the next video. So check out that coming up. Be sure to watch it. And I'm also going to be talking about the smear campaign. That's also going to be coming up soon. So check out the next video on flying monkeys and be sure to watch that. And I will see you again very, very soon. Thank you for joining and watching, and I hope you found that helpful. Bye for now.